Your support keeps these stories alive. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell.
My name is David. I am 42 years old, and the story I am about to share is one that has defined most of my adult life. It is a story about control, betrayal, estrangement, and ultimately the complicated ways family can circle back into your life when you least expect it. For most of my childhood, and well into my 20s, my mother believed she knew what was best for me, what I should study, what job I should take, and most painfully, who I should marry. For her, my life wasn't mine to live. It was her project, her legacy, and she wanted to script every chapter whether I agreed or not that I grew up in a strict household. My father passed away when I was only 15, leaving my mother to raise me and my younger sister alone. From that day forward, she became more controlling than ever. She was terrified of losing control of the family she had left. I was the eldest son, the one she expected to carry on the family's reputation, the one who would make her proud. She often reminded me of this responsibility in ways that felt less like encouragement and more like commands. By the time I turned 30, I was working steadily as an accountant, saving money, living a quiet and disciplined life. But my mother wasn't satisfied. She said repeatedly, "David, you have everything except a wife. A man without a family is a man without roots." At first, I brushed it off. I thought she was just being her usual self, pushing, nagging, trying to set me up with distant cousins' daughters or family friends. But things took a darker turn when she introduced me to Robert. He was a man a few years older than me, polished, successful, and, most importantly to her, from a wealthy and respected family. She framed it as if she was doing me a favor, arranging my future for me like one might arrange a dinner reservation. "David," she said firmly one evening, "you are going to marry Robert. His family has status, money, and influence. Together, you'll both be stronger. This is the life you deserve." I thought she was joking at first. I laughed, waiting for her to smirk, but her face was hard, her eyes unblinking. She was serious. My stomach dropped. "Mom, I'm not marrying someone because you decided it for me. That's not how this works. I don't even love him." Her response was chilling. "Love doesn't pay the bills, David. Love doesn't give you security. Robert will. You'll learn to love him. I didn't love your father when I married him, but we built a life." I felt the blood drain from my face. My father, her marriage to him, was now reduced to a cautionary tale, a sacrifice in her mind. I clenched my fists and said quietly but firmly, "No, I'm not marrying Robert. This is my life." The look she gave me in that moment was something I'll never forget. Pure rage mixed with disappointment, as though I'd spit in her face. "If you refuse this, David," she said coldly, "you are no son of mine." I thought she was bluffing. Parents say things in anger all the time. But I was wrong. Within weeks, she followed through. She told relatives I had disgraced her, that I had disobeyed her wishes, that I was selfish. At family gatherings, I was no longer invited. When I tried to call, she hung up. When I sent letters, she returned them unopened. She cut me out completely, disowned me in every way that mattered. The first year was the hardest. Holidays came and went, and my seat at the table remained empty. Relatives who once embraced me now avoided me, afraid of upsetting her. My sister spoke to me in secret, whispering updates about Mom, but always with fear in her voice that she would be caught. I felt like an orphan even though my mother was still alive, that I'd built my life from the ground up without her. I worked long hours, saved every dollar, and eventually bought a small house on the outskirts of town. I learned to cook for myself, celebrate birthdays alone, and build friendships outside the family I had lost. I wasn't rich, I wasn't powerful, but I was free. And for years, I thought that was the end of it, that my mother had erased me forever from her life. But I was wrong. Because more than a decade later, when I had finally made peace with the silence, my mother came back into my life in the most unexpected way, on her knees, begging for my help. More than a decade had passed since my mother disowned me. In that time, I had built a life without her. It wasn't always easy, but I had found a rhythm: work, friends, my small circle of trust. I had convinced myself I didn't need her approval, that her absence was better than her control. Most days I believed it. But there were nights, especially around the holidays, when the silence felt heavier than bricks on my chest. Still, I carried on. I told myself, she made her choice. She wanted control, not a son. Then, one evening as I was getting home from work, I found her sitting on the steps of my porch. At first, I didn't recognize her. She looked smaller somehow, shrunken. Her once perfectly styled hair was streaked with gray, her face lined with deep wrinkles I had never seen before. Tom had not been kind to her, or maybe it was guilt that had carved those lines. When she lifted her eyes to meet mine, I froze in the driveway, my briefcase dangling from my hand. "David," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Please, I need to talk to you." I stood there, stunned. I hadn't heard her voice in over 10 years. Memories rushed through me. Her cold words, the way she turned her back on me, the sting of being told I was no son of hers. My chest tightened, and for a long moment, I considered turning around and walking away. But something in her eyes stopped me. It wasn't anger this time. It wasn't control. It was desperation. Reluctantly, I walked past her, unlocked the door, and said, "If you want to talk, come inside. But don't think for a second that we can pretend the last decade didn't happen." Inside, she sat on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling in her lap. I stayed standing, arms crossed, my heart pounding. "Why are you here?" I asked bluntly. She took a shaky breath. "I know I don't deserve your kindness. I know I hurt you. But, David, I have no one else. Your sister moved overseas years ago, and we barely talk. Most of my so-called friends disappeared when I stopped hosting parties. And now, I'm sick." The word hung in the air like smoke. I narrowed my eyes. "Sick? What do you mean?" She swallowed hard, her eyes brimming with tears. "I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. The doctors say it's treatable, but the treatments are expensive, and I can't do this alone. I thought I could, but I can't." Her voice cracked. "David, I need you." For a moment, I felt like the room spun. The same woman who had cut me out of her life without hesitation was now sitting in my living room, begging for help. Part of me wanted to laugh bitterly, to tell her she had made her bed and now had a lie in it. Another part of me, deep down, buried under years of anger, still felt the instinct to care, to protect, to step up. She was still my mother, after all. But that didn't erase what she had done that I clenched my fists. Do you have any idea what it was like for me all these years? Do you know what it felt like to be erased? To be treated like I was dead just because I didn't bend to your will? She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "I know, David. I know. I was wrong. I was so blinded by pride, by control. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only protecting my image. And I lost you. I lost my son." Her words pierced me, but I wasn't ready to forgive. "You didn't just lose me, Mom. You threw me away. And now you're here because you're desperate, not because you truly want me back." Her hands dropped, her eyes pleading. Maybe that's how it started, but being here now, seeing you, hearing you, I realize how much I missed you. I don't want to die with this wall between us. Please, David, please help me. Please forgive me." The silence that followed was unbearable. My heart ached with conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, guilt, love. She was my mother, the same woman who had cooked me meals, tucked me in as a child, cheered for me at school events. But she was also the woman who had chosen control over love, pride over family, and left me to rot in the shadows for over a decade. Finally, I said, my voice hoarse, "I'll help you. But don't mistake this for forgiveness. That has to be earned. And it won't be easy." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded. "Thank you, David. That's all I ask. A chance." And just like that, the door I thought I had closed forever cracked open again. Not wide, not enough to erase the pain, but enough to let the story continue. Helping my mother again after more than 10 years of silence was like walking through a minefield. Every step felt dangerous. Every word between us carried the weight of old wounds. I told myself I was only doing it because it was the right thing to do, because despite everything, she was still my mother and she was sick. But deep down, I also knew part of me wanted answers. Part of me wanted to see if she really regretted what she had done, or if this was just desperation wrapped in apologies. The first weeks were a blur of hospital visits, doctor consultations, and paperwork. I drove her to appointments, sat with her through chemotherapy sessions, and listened carefully as the doctors explained her treatment plan. It wasn't cheap, even with insurance. The bills stacked up quickly, and I found myself dipping into my savings to cover costs she couldn't handle. I didn't complain, but the resentment grew quietly inside me. I couldn't stop thinking. She disowned me for refusing to marry the man she chose, and now I'm the one paying for her survival point one day. As we sat in the waiting room, she reached out and touched my hand. "David, I don't deserve this kindness," she whispered. Her voice was weak, frail from the treatments. "After everything I did to you, I thought you would turn your back on me the way I turned mine on you." I pulled my hand back, not unkindly, but firmly. "I'm here because it's the right thing to do, Mom. Not because I've forgotten. Not because it doesn't still hurt." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I'm sorry, David. Every single night, I lay in bed thinking of you, wondering if you hated me. I told myself I did the right thing, that I was protecting you. But I wasn't. I was protecting myself from the fear of losing control, from the fear of being alone. I was selfish. I wanted to believe her. But old wounds don't heal just because someone finally admits they were wrong. "You didn't just hurt me," I said quietly. "You erased me. You made me feel like I didn't exist. Do you know how many birthdays I spent alone? How many Christmases I sat in silence, wondering if my family even remembered me?" She broke down crying, her shoulders shaking. People in the waiting room turned to look, but I didn't care. I had waited years for her to acknowledge the damage she had caused. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "If I could go back, I'd do it differently. I would never force you into that marriage. I see now how wrong I was." Her words were like a bomb and a knife at the same time. Part of me felt relief hearing her say them, but another part of me still raged. Why did it take so long? Why did you only realize this when your health forced you to your knees? As weeks turned into months, I noticed how vulnerable she had become. The once proud, commanding woman who dictated every aspect of my life now struggled just to climb the stairs. She needed me in ways I never thought possible. Rides to treatment, meals cooked, medicine picked up. And in those moments, the power dynamic shifted completely. For the first time in my life, she depended on me instead of the other way around. But with that shift came tension. Some days, she slipped back into her old self. She would criticize the way I cooked her meals or comment on how I dressed for work. Once she even said, "If you had married Robert, you'd be living in a bigger house by now. He's done very well for himself." I stopped what I was doing and stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious? After everything, you still bring him up?" My voice was sharp, my patience snapping. She looked ashamed, her face reddening. "I'm sorry, old habits. I guess I can't change overnight." I shook my head, my jaw tight. "You can't expect me to forgive you if you keep reopening the wound. You wanted to control my life, and I walked away from you for that. If you want me to stay now, you need to let go of that past once and for all." From that day on, she never mentioned Robert again. Slowly, painfully, something began to shift between us. We still argued sometimes, but there were also moments, quiet, fragile moments, where I saw glimpses of the mother I had once loved. Like the time she told me stories about Dad, ones I had never heard before. Or the evening she grabbed my hand during a chemo session and whispered, "I don't deserve a son like you, but I thank God you're still here." Those words stayed with me, because for the first time in decades, I realized my mother wasn't a villain or a tyrant or some unmovable wall of control. She was just a flawed, scared human being, one who had made terrible mistakes and now was finally paying the price. And in helping her, I began to realize something else. Maybe this wasn't just about her needing me. Maybe it was about me needing closure. Maybe, after all these years, I was finally ready to confront the ghosts of my past. Not by erasing them, but by facing them head on. The months dragged on, and the treatments became harsher. At first, my mother managed to walk into the hospital with her chin high, still clinging to some shred of dignity. But chemotherapy is relentless. It doesn't care about pride, about image, about the persona you've built your whole life. It strips you down to nothing. Her hair began to fall out in clumps, her skin grew pale, and the strong, commanding woman I had known all my life now looked fragile, almost breakable. One night, I came by after work to bring her dinner. When I walked into the house, I found her in the bathroom, sitting on the floor, clutching a handful of her own hair that had just come out. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in my life, I saw her completely defeated. "David," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I can do this." I froze in the doorway, my chest tightening. I had seen her angry, controlling, even cruel, but never like this. Never vulnerable. Part of me wanted to walk away, to remind her of the years she had left me to face my pain alone. But another part, the son buried under years of resentment, knelt beside her. I put a hand on her shoulder and said quietly, "You don't have to do this alone. I'm here. Whether you believe it or not, I'm still here." She broke down completely then, sobbing into my chest. Between gasps, she whispered words I had never heard from her. "I'm sorry, David. I was a terrible mother to you. I tried to control your life because I was terrified of losing everything after your father died. But instead of protecting you, I destroyed us. I don't deserve your help. I don't deserve your forgiveness." Her words cut deep, but they also pierced through the armor I had built around myself for so long. I pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "You're right. You don't deserve it. Not after what you did. You broke me in ways you'll never fully understand. But forgiveness isn't about you deserving it. It's about me needing to let go. I've carried this anger for more than 10 years, and it's been eating me alive. If I hold on to it any longer, it will destroy me." She stared at me, her lips trembling. Do you mean you forgive me?" I took a deep breath. "I don't know if I can forgive you completely. Not yet, but I'm willing to try. That's all I can promise." Her sobs turned softer, almost like relief. She leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes. "That's more than I could ever ask for." The treatments grew worse before they got better. Some days, she couldn't even lift a spoon to eat. I found myself cooking for her, cleaning her house, even helping her dress. The reversal of roles was jarring. For decades, she had lorded her authority over me, dictating how I should live, who I should love. Now, she needed me for the most basic things. And in that strange shift, something unexpected happened. We began to talk, really talk. Not like mother and son locked in a power struggle, but like two people finally acknowledging their flaws. She asked me about my life during the years we were apart. For the first time, she listened without interrupting, without judging. I told her about the lonely birthdays, the holidays spent alone, the nights when I nearly picked up the phone but stopped myself, afraid she'd hang up. Her eyes filled with guilt each time, and she whispered, "I can never undo what I did. I can only say I'm sorry." One evening, when the treatments had drained her so much she could barely lift her head, she whispered something that shook me. "David, if I don't make it, please don't let my mistakes define me completely. I want you to remember that I did love you, even if I showed it in the worst possible way." I sat beside her bed, my throat tight. "If you want me to remember you with love, then give me something real to hold on to. Tell me one truth about you. Not the woman who controlled me, not the mother who disowned me. Tell me who you really were beneath all that." She was silent for a long moment, then she whispered, "I was scared, David. Always scared. After your father died, I thought if I controlled everything, nothing else could fall apart. But all I did was push you away. That's who I was, a scared woman pretending to be strong." Hearing her say that broke something in me, but it also mended something else. For the first time, I understood her, not as a tyrant, not as the villain of my story, but as a flawed human being who had let fear consume her. From that night on, our relationship changed. It wasn't perfect. Too much had happened for perfection, but there was honesty now. And honesty, for us, was a miracle. The final stretch of my mother's illness was both the hardest and, strangely, the most healing time of my life. The treatments had taken everything out of her, but slowly, her condition began to stabilize. The doctor said the cancer hadn't disappeared, but it was under control. She had a chance. Though her body would never be what it once was, and her independence was gone. By then, our relationship had transformed into something I never thought possible. She was no longer the untouchable authority figure, and I was no longer the rebellious son cast out of the family. We were simply two people, scarred by the past, trying to find common ground. It was awkward at times. There were moments when the old tension resurfaced, when she would slip back into old habits of telling me what I should be doing with my life. But the difference now was that she caught herself. She would stop mid-sentence, sigh, and say, "I'm sorry, David. That's not my place anymore." Those words, simple as they were, felt like a victory. For decades, I had fought for my right to live my own life. And now, at long last, she was acknowledging it. One afternoon, as I was sitting with her on the porch of her small house, she turned to me and said, "Do you remember the day I told you you were no son of mine?" I clenched my jaw. How could I forget? That sentence had haunted me for over 10 years. "Yeah," I said quietly. She reached for my hand, her fingers thin and frail. "That was the worst mistake of my life. I lost my son that day, and I thought I could live without you, but I couldn't. Pride cost me everything. And yet, here you are, still helping me, still giving me more than I ever gave you. I don't deserve it, David." I swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in my eyes. "No, you don't. But you're still my mother. And despite everything, I guess part of me never stopped hoping we'd find our way back." We sat in silence for a while, just listening to the wind in the trees. It struck me then how different things were. Years ago, silence between us had been heavy, filled with unspoken anger and resentment. Now, the silence felt lighter, like a fragile peace. Over time, her health stabilized enough that she no longer needed constant hospital visits. I still drove her to checkups, still handled bills and prescriptions, but the fear of losing her had eased. And in that space, we began to rebuild something resembling a family bond. Not the bond we had before, because that one had been poisoned by control and resentment, but something new, something more honest. Forgiveness didn't come all at once. It came in small pieces. The first time she admitted her faults without excuses, the first time she told me she was proud of me without attaching it to conditions, the first time she asked me about my life and really listened. Each piece chipped away at the wall I had built around my heart, until one day, I realized the anger wasn't burning as fiercely as before. Did I forgive her completely? I don't think I ever will. Some wounds never fully heal. But I learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it just means choosing not to let the pain control you anymore. Years later, when I look back on everything, the day she tried to force me into marrying Robert, the day she disowned me, the lonely years that followed, and the night she showed up on my porch begging for help, I see it all as chapters in a story I never asked to live, but one that shaped me into who I am. I learned that family is complicated, that love can be twisted by pride, and that sometimes the people who hurt you most are also the ones you can't fully turn away from. I learned that strength isn't just walking away. It's also finding the courage to face the past when it comes knocking on your door. As for my mother, she never fully became the person I had wished she would be when I was young. But she became something else. Human, vulnerable, flawed, and, in her final years, genuinely remorseful. And in that humanity, I finally found some peace. When people ask me if I regret helping her after everything she did, my answer is simple: no. Because helping her didn't just give her a second chance. It gave me one too. A chance to close the wound, to release the anger, and to finally move forward with my life. I am David, the son who was disowned, the son who came back, and the son who chose to help when it would have been easier to walk away. And that choice, as painful as it was, made me stronger than I ever thought I could be.